Ukraine calling it Trump, quote, giving a green light to Putin to attack them. A senior Ukrainian official tells our Jim Sciutto that just moments ago, after Trump announced to the world that Russia is about to retaliate against Ukraine. The president of the United States revealing details of his long 75-minute phone call with Vladimir Putin in a post that Trump actually deleted, but then he reposted it an hour later. We're unclear what the issue was or what he thought the issue was, but he says that the Russian leader told him after Ukraine's devastating strike on the Russian Air Force that there is no chance of a ceasefire. Now, today's call marks Putin's first direct response to the attack, although I suppose we should call it indirect because Trump is the one messengering it. Trump called it a, quote, good conversation, saying that Putin's message couldn't have been clearer. Trump tells us about the conversation, saying, quote, President Putin did say, and very strongly, that he will have to respond to the recent attack on the airfields. Now, the president of the United States, let's be clear, not only announcing Putin's plans for retaliation and not condemning them at all, calling them an attack. This is new video is into out front of key moments from the actual strike on those airfields. Ukraine's drones delivering that stunning blow to Russia. They obliterated, we're told, 41 of Putin's planes on the ground there. Let's just be clear. These are military targets. It's unmistakable that they are that these are the planes that Putin uses to drop bombs on civilians in Ukraine. Yet today, Trump calls Ukraine's act an attack and is just acting like it's completely normal and right for Putin to respond. No attempts by Trump's own account of the call. This is his account of the call to de-escalate it. Out front now, Kremlin target Andrei Soldatov. He's a Russian investigative journalist right now living in exile. He was declared a foreign agent in 2023. His website does remain blocked in Russia tonight. And Andrei, you are the author of the new book, Our Dear Friends in Moscow, The Inside Story of a Broken Generation. So, Andrei, Putin tells President Trump, this is Trump's description of it, very strongly, that he will respond to Ukraine taking out the bombers that he uses daily to bomb Ukraine. Putin then later, to his cabinet, calls Zelensky a terrorist. So what do you hear there in terms of what retaliation the world should prepare for?
Well, of course, this Ukrainian attacks was a big game changer, if not on the battlefield, but for the way Putin sees Russian national security, and well, he believes that he needs to respond, otherwise he would look really weak, and he wants to look really tough. The problem is that he doesn't want to provoke Trump. So what he wants to do is to get Trump on his side and to help him see the situation his way, and apparently it works.
Well, certainly the way Trump relayed the conversation, Trump did not expressed that he had said anything would be wrong with Putin doing that. That is certainly the case. And just to point out, Trump posted it, he pulled his post back, and then he posted it again. So, Andrei, there's talk tonight also of a Kremlin-led witch hunt, basically Putin looking for who may have, possibly helped Ukraine's attack. Do you have any idea right now from your reporting who the Kremlin is targeting?
Well, right now the idea is to accuse the Ukrainians of being terrorists, and that was the message of Putin at the meeting with the ministers. The problem was that the attacks on air forces coincided with the attacks on trains, so Putin wanted today to talk only about trains. He never mentioned Ukrainians' attacks on airfields, but nevertheless he made his point that all Ukrainians who attacked Russia were terrorists, and that is, of course, a very strong signal.
So, Andrei, your new book, I've got it here, Our Dear Friends in Moscow, The Inside Story of a Broken Generation. And in it, you've got this empty wine bottle here on the front. I mean, you talk about a breakdown in Russia. You write candidly about Putin's grip on the country, and you write about a moment that actually happened on Larry King. So this may surprise a lot of people. Vladimir Putin actually went on Larry King, and Larry King asked Putin about the Kursk submarine disaster, right? That was that horrific disaster and tragedy in which 118 Russian soldiers on board were killed, and that they had, desperately were tapping on the edge trying to be saved, and they died. It was a horrible thing. Here's the exchange between Larry King and Vladimir Putin.
What happened? You tell me. What happened with the submarine?
It sunk.
And then there's this pause and then that smile, Andre. You were watching that interview. You were in Russia with friends. And you write about the reaction in the room in your book. And you write this. You write, Putin's answer shocked us. Combined with his grin, it felt like the most cynical response that a president, a head of state, could possibly have to that state's failure to save its sailors. We could hardly believe what we'd heard him say. And then you continue to talk about someone in the room. You write, then Marina exploded. How dare this American ask Putin about Kursk in such a disrespectful way? Well done for Putin for cutting him off. That's our St. Petersburg way. Tell him to go F himself. And you say that night was probably the very first time it dawned on us that we didn't completely understand our friends. And now here we are, Andre. What is Putin's true standing right now in Russia as you see it?
Well, unfortunately, it's pretty strong, and it's built on the feeling which was shared by many Russians back in the late 1990s and the beginning of the 2000s, that the country was humiliated by the West, that the country needed a strong man to fix it. And the way to fix it is to stand well and to fight the Americans. So we've been always having this hate and love relationship between Russia and the United States, because Russia wanted to have this status of superpower, and Russia could get this status only from the United States. Lots of people understood that and still understand that, and it is in a way a basis of a huge support Putin still enjoys in the country.
Congressman, really appreciate your time. I want to start with the president's phone call with President Putin today. In his Truth Social post laying out kind of the top lines from that call, included that Putin, quote, very strongly will have to respond to Ukraine. I think what was striking about it was not that there's going to be a response. I think there's been an expectation of that, but that there was what wasn't in there was a condemnation of any potential action or an effort to try and get him to stop. Why do you think that was?
Well, I think throughout the president's term, he's been trying to get this conflict to end and to get Vladimir Putin to stop. Let's be very clear. Vladimir Putin is a vile dictator and thug. He is solely responsible for this conflict and what has happened over the last 3+ years and the death and destruction that has been wrought. And frankly, I thought it was extremely impressive what Ukraine was able to pull off the other day, and obviously the impact that it had on Russia's military equipment. So there is, obviously a real need for this conflict to come to an end. Obviously, the president has been trying over the last few months to get a negotiation between Russia and Ukraine to bring this to an end, because the reality is that we're basically at a stalemate here. Right. And the longer that this war persists, the more likely it is that Ukraine would ultimately collapse. And that would be catastrophic for Europe, for Eastern Europe, and the United States and our allies. So getting this conflict to an end is critical. I think, obviously, we need to do everything we can to deter Putin from taking any further action. However,
including congressional sanctions? Do you want more?
Look, I support enhanced sanctions. I am a co-sponsor of the legislation to do that. Frankly, that is something the Biden administration should have done right out of the gate. There should have been secondary sanctions. The Europeans should have ceased purchasing Russian gas. There's a lot that should have been done in the 3 years leading up to this administration taking over. But I certainly believe fundamentally that both this administration and Congress need to act. Vladimir Putin needs to be stopped dead in his tracks. And what he has done throughout the course of this 3-year war is nothing short of genocide.
US President Donald Trump has flagged that Vladimir Putin will seek revenge on Ukraine for its daring drone attack on the Kremlin's military bases after a phone call between the two leaders. Kyiv has released new footage on Sunday's coordinated strikes that took place deep inside Russia. Ukraine claims it damaged or destroyed more than 40 warplanes in an operation more than a year and a half in the making. It targeted Moscow's strategic bombers used to conduct nightly strikes on Ukrainian towns and cities. In a social media post, Mr. Trump says he had a good conversation with the Russian leader, but not a conversation that will lead to immediate peace. He added President Putin did say, and very strongly, that he will have to respond to the recent attacks on the airfields. The Russian leader has taken aim at Kyiv, accusing it of trying to disrupt peace negotiations.
In an attempt to intimidate Russia, the Kyiv authorities have resorted to organising terrorist acts and, at the same time, are asking for a suspension of hostilities for 30 or even 60 days. They are asking for a summit meeting. But how can such meetings be held in these conditions? What is there to talk about? Who negotiates with those who rely on terror with terrorists?
The Kremlin presented a memorandum listing its conditions to end the war at a second round of direct talks between Russia and Ukraine in Istanbul. It wants Kyiv to give up territory occupied by Russia during the 3-year conflict. The Ukrainian president wants the West to pressure Moscow towards peace through increased sanctions.
The Russians knew that this is an ultimatum, and neither the Ukrainian side nor anyone else will perceive it seriously because it's an ultimatum. This was not a memorandum of understanding. A memorandum is supposed to be agreed upon by two sides and not contain requirements from just one side. That's why one cannot call this document a memorandum. After all, this is an ultimatum from the Russian side addressed to us.
Russia continues to claim successes on the front line as it attempts to create a buffer zone along the Ukrainian border. It says its troops have captured a village in the Sumy region in northeastern Ukraine. In Brussels, representatives from more than 50 countries have met to discuss ways to better support Kyiv. Allies have offered to pay for defence manufacturing by Ukrainian companies in their own countries. They say they will continue to back Ukraine in the drawn-out conflict with Russia.
Russia will fail because brave Ukrainians are defending their country and their freedom, confronting the Russian aggressor with great resolve. And because we are supporting Ukraine in its defense with weapons, ammunition, training, with everything it needs, and for as long as it needs.
America's editor John Lyons joins us now from Washington, D.C. Donald Trump has been speaking with Vladimir Putin. What more can you tell us about this conversation?
Well, Dan, a few hours ago, just from over here in the West Wing, just to the right of the White House, Donald Trump had a conversation with Vladimir Putin. It went for about an hour and 10 minutes. The White House, of course, as does the Kremlin in Moscow, always issues readouts, where in fact Donald Trump's sort of varied that convention. He now just puts it on his internet site, Truth Social. He says it was a good conversation, but there are two really important things that I think the viewers need to know about. The first is on Iran, where Donald Trump, and this is something that the Israelis are absolutely strong on, Donald Trump said to Vladimir Putin, Iran will not be allowed to get a nuclear weapon. It's non-negotiable. Donald Trump says that Vladimir Putin agreed and even offered to be a negotiator, a mediator with Tehran, which is news. And secondly, and ominously for Ukraine, Donald Trump says that Vladimir Putin said to him, we have no choice but to respond to that attack last week by Ukraine. That's the audacious attack which Ukraine had planned for a year or so. They had drones hidden in trucks and they were in different parts of Russia. And suddenly, when the order was given, the drones came, the ceilings of these trucks parted, and all these drones went and attacked a lot of the Russian aircraft. Vladimir Putin, according to Donald Trump, said, I have no choice choice but to respond strongly. And the really significant thing, according to what Donald Trump reported on Truth Social, he put up no resistance to that. Usually a president would say caution, moderation, and, let's try to de-escalate things. There was nothing in that. Essentially, what this means, from what we have, the available evidence, is Donald Trump has given the green light for Vladimir Putin to dramatically escalate the attacks on Ukraine. So I think in coming days, sadly, I think we will see much more ferocious attacks on Kyiv, the capital, and other parts of Ukraine.
Based on confirmed reports from June 3rd and 4th, 2025, Ukraine's security service SBU carried out a covert underwater bombing of the Kerch Bridge. The operation likely used a combination of underwater drones, possibly models like the Marichka carrying large amounts of explosives to support Ukrainian combat divers in placing the charges. To prepare for the mission, Ukrainian forces used satellite imagery and underwater sonar mapping. It's also likely that small drones or covert dive teams were sent in earlier to gather detailed data on the bridge's underwater structure. This is how the bombs could have been planted. Under the cover of night, the divers made their approach using closed-circuit rebreathers, which allowed them to move silently, with minimal acoustic or visual detection. They navigated with precision using sonar pingers and underwater GPS or inertial navigation systems, guiding them directly to the structural base of the bridge. Once the necessary intelligence had been gathered, the team likely deployed Marichka-class underwater drones to help transport the explosives, an enormous payload of nearly 1,000 kilograms or roughly 1 ton. The explosives were likely a mix of shake charges or limpet mine-style devices engineered for maximum impact against submerged structural supports. To give you an idea, the Ford Fiesta weighs about 1 ton, which is 1,000 kilograms. Now imagine the scale of this operation. Ukrainian forces had to transport nearly a ton of explosives, roughly the size and weight of that car. Think about how many trips they had to make back and forth from Ukrainian territory just to deliver and carefully place that much explosive material beneath the bridge. When the divers reached their designated targets, they began attaching the explosive devices directly to the bridge's support piers. These charges were probably magnetized or outfitted with specialized clamps to remain secure even in strong underwater currents. To ensure they remain undetected, the devices were carefully placed below the silt line or within recessed structural joints, areas difficult to inspect with standard drones or surveillance equipment. To prevent tampering and guarantee mission success, the charges were equipped with anti-handling mechanisms and could be triggered remotely or via timed detonation. After the installation was complete, the divers quietly withdrew along their original route. It's also possible they had alternate extraction plans, such as surfacing at a remote location or being retrieved by a submersible. Then, at precisely 4:44 a.m. local time on June 3rd, 2025, the explosives were detonated. The resulting blast caused significant structural damage to one of the bridge's spans, disrupting traffic and cutting off a key logistical route, a major blow to Russian military operations in occupied Crimea. In the future, Ukraine also plans to use the Marichka underwater drone to target bridges. Functioning like a torpedo, it can strike and potentially damage or destroy these structures. As stated, there is a possibility they used Marichka, a 6-meter-long, stealthy, multi-purpose undersea drone designed to do just one thing: make sure Russian ships, bridges, and fortifications blow up. Built by Ukrainian defense startup AMMO, this sleek black torpedo-shake machine is a prototype. And with a claimed range of up to 1,000 kilometers, it can loiter beneath the surface for hours, patiently awaiting the perfect moment to strike. It's invisible to most radars, scanners, and sonar systems, its developers claim. A nightmare combination when paired with its ability to wait silently in standby mode until triggered by a timer or signal. With multiple internal compartments, it can also switch from a suicide strike role to cargo delivery or reconnaissance, depending on the mission. Their route probably originated from Ukrainian-controlled areas such as near Odessa or Snake Island. With a stealthy, low-profile design, they managed to slip past Russian maritime surveillance and navigate undetected toward the target zone. While the drones captured attention above the surface, combat divers were deployed quietly from a covered vessel, possibly disguised as a civilian fishing boat, ready to carry out the underwater phase of the mission. Let's take a look at the Crimean Bridge, also called Kerch Strait Bridge, spanning a staggering 227 meters, is a pair of parallel bridges, one for a 4-lane road and one for a double-track railway at a cost of around $3.7 billion. Let's take a deep dive into the mission of this drone, like how these sea drones have damaged bridges, sunk ships, and even taken down helicopters. From undisclosed locations, 2 naval drones with a quirky name Sea Beatty are preparing for launch. The target, the very heart of the Crimea Bridge. With its primary aim fixed on the rail-crossing bridge, these drones are about to unleash an unexpected chain of events. As the naval drones are released into the night seas, fate seems to have other plans. Instead of hitting the intended rail-crossing bridge, 2 of the drones mistakenly took the target pillars of the road bridge and collides with it, missing the rail bridge by a few meters. The collision creates a resounding impact, leaving behind a noticeable dent and a brief disruption in transportation. These kinds of attack creates a sense of psychological fear on the other party, resulting in putting more strained resources into protecting the bridge. Let's take a look at how this works. The hatch cracks open and rushes water from the depths. But that's not all. This water takes a well-designed route, flowing in from the bottom and skillfully channeled out through the back. As the drone takes its first step, it no longer uses Starlink communication. It now relies on an alternative satellite and GPS system. These cutting-edge naval drones don't travel solo. A typical operation involves a squadron of 6 to 7 naval drones working in unison, where the operator takes the reins. Guiding the drone is no easy task, and it's all done through video feeds. The operator becomes the drone's eyes and ears, making sure it stays on course. When the target is in sight, it's time to kick things into high gear. The operator pushes the throttle to the max, laser-focused on the colossal objective. Imagine the drone striking the ship's hull with pinpoint accuracy. The fuse activates the switch, triggering a piece of Soviet-era tech, a bomb designed to pack a punch. This explosive payload is set to damage this Russian intelligence ship worth $675 million. Let's take a look at how they execute one of the missions. Take this, an arsenal of security measures including nets, pontoons, and barriers to detect potential enemy divers. 7 maritime naval drones sail through as a synchronized unit, managed to breach the defenses that were once thought impenetrable. The concept revolves around the notion that should merely 2 among them successfully reach the assigned target, the potential for inflicting damage would have been realized. As the drones executed their mission with precision, the impact of their actions made a huge sound all over the seaport. The strike hit multiple vessels, including at least 1 high-valuable target, a frigate, and several other ships. It creates a psychological effect on the other party, and it prompts them to stay vigilant. Here, at Cape Tarkenka, the Ukrainians have leveled up their sea drone attacks by targeting helicopters as well. The missile was launched from a Magura V-5 unmanned surface vehicle operated by the Main Directorate of Intelligence's Elite Group 13 unit was launched and took down a Mi-8 helicopter. Reports also suggest that another Russian helicopter, the type of which has not been disclosed, sustained damage but managed to return to its airfield. The missile used in the attack was an R-73A A-11 Archer, or an air-to-air missile, which has now been adapted for a surface-launched naval role under the designation Sea Dragon. This adaptation represents a significant evolution in Ukraine's military capabilities. Video footage of the incident reveals intense combat activity when one of the USVs is seen being sprayed with machine gun fire for some time from this Mi-8 helicopter. It is here the helicopter deployed flares to avoid heat-seeking missiles. And at this instance, the missile from the Ukrainian sea drones was launched. The helicopter then appears to fall and an object is seen crashing into the water. Evidence of Ukraine's efforts to equip its USVs with heat-seeking air-to-air missiles first surfaced in May 2024. Do check out our original animated video on anti-aircraft guns.